Welcome, new and old friends. I just have a couple things to say, and then the stories will begin. Before you drift off into the dream realm, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. If you'd like to find out about my social links, my website, how to help the channel, check the description box. Now turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. It's time to dream. The Man on the Bus by Sarah. The story takes place from when I was 15 to 18. I used to take the public bus to go to school and wherever I wanted to go since it was cheap and my parents worked a lot. I recalled this older man on the bus when I was 15. He wasn't super close to me, but he was standing, holding the pole on the bus, looking in my direction. He wasn't super dirty or stood out because of how creepy he was, but just that he was looking at me, and I swore I had seen him before. I did take the same bus, and most people did, so I just told myself that as I continued my way to school. I started to notice him after that. I knew it was because I noticed him that one time, but I realized he was always on the bus, always facing me in some way. It was either a seat that faced my way, standing to do so, and that just started to creep me out. I started to notice him on the other buses I took. Once in a while, I'd be on ones to leave the mall or head back to hanging out with my friends. I realized later is when I posted something on my social medias. When I was 18, my last week of high school, that's when it all came to a head. I decided I needed to walk, stressed out from school and some drama in my friends group. I decided to head down to the park near my house and sit on the swings as I think over some stuff. As I was walking, I felt like I was being watched. I turned off the music I was listening to in my headphones and started to listen around myself. There it was, footsteps behind me. They were keeping pace with mine. Each step I took, they took. I stopped to pretend to be looking for something in my pockets, and they stopped as well. That's when I looked behind me. There he was, this man from the bus, looking intensely at me. I screamed and took off. He followed behind me. There was a gas station that normally had a ton of people in it this time of day. I decided to run that way. I have never ran so hard in my life. My lungs started to burn as my legs did the same. I swore I could feel his hands reaching for me, trying to grab me as I ran. The second I got close to that gas station, I heard his footsteps fade away. I ran into the store and collapsed next to the drinks. One of the other people inside asked if I was okay, which I tried hard to say something, but I was so out of breath and I shook my head. She brought me over a glass of water and talked to one of the employees. After some time, I got my breath back and told the other customer and employee what had just happened. They helped me get a hold of my dad, who came and picked me up as the other two people waited with me. I'm very grateful for them helping me figure out what I needed to do. I was just so scared I couldn't really think. My dad drove me to and from school for the rest of the year, so for a week, and since I went to college in another state, I left that stalker behind as well. I never have seen him since. Man on the bus who stalked me for years. Let's not meet again. What if every night when you go to sleep, your brain shuts down your consciousness completely, ending your existence only to reboot a perfect copy in the morning? The you from yesterday is dead, tomorrow you will be dead, and a perfect copy of you will be thinking this is a silly theory, because they can perfectly remember reading this today, and they believe their you still there. how my friend and I were stalked for years and nearly kidnapped by Temporary Paella 194. First part of the story got delayed, so I'm going to shorten it. Basically, at summer camp, me and my friends started to attend in 2019 does surveys every Sunday based on the topics we'll be discussing, so we get public speaking and a more generalized opinion from others in the area. Me and my friend teamed up with 2 counselors and hit the town. Our last stop was a Walmart, and we talked to a bunch of different people. The most memorable was the second to last, an older man that asked us for our names and all about us after he finished answering our questions. At the time, we were both 13 and hardly had any concept of stranger danger, so we gladly answered about ourselves. Anyway, a few days later, an account popped up on our friend's request called Ed Pascus. The account liked a bunch of our old posts, commented a bunch of fire and road emojis, and called us hot and sexy on our posts. It got to the point where they started to send us inappropriate pics. So, me and my friend ended up blocking the account. Only a few days later, the account was permanently deleted. It didn't show up on our searches for it. That's why we thought it was the end of it. It was not. When we finally got back to school in August, we basically forgot the event altogether. Yet again, this time on both of our Facebook accounts, we got a notice from someone named Ed Parsons, wanting to be our friend. Immediately blocked that account again, but not before they had already commented lewd things on my baby pictures. Comments on how pretty my baby blonde hair was, how I looked good in short dresses, things like that. But after that, we both talked to our parents about the situation, and other than keeping our account private, there wasn't much else we could really do. The cops shrugged and said just take the app down completely, but hey, we're teens. Of course we didn't do that. Over the years, till around the end of 2021, this man kept sending friend requests from different accounts with similar variations of their name, which was a bit stupid, but whatever. Though, at the beginning of 2022, this is where it starts getting really creepy. Accounts with the names and pictures of our friends started showing up in our notifications, so obviously we added them thinking it was our friends. We were wrong. Almost immediately, most of our posts had likes or comments on them from this account, and then there'd be multiple DMs of inappropriate pics to both of us. We had blocked the account again. This became a reoccurring cycle. Account with friend info, pictures, multiple friends who would get hacked, stolen, duplicated, etc., just so they could friend us again and again without us worrying too much about it. Finally, it got to the point where we stopped adding people from our school at all, even friends. The final time this happened was in the summer of 2022. The swarm of fake accounts had stopped roughly 2 months prior, and seeing as this friend request looked legit by a school friend, I decided to try it out. My friend didn't, she was still wary, but I decided to give it a shot. The compromise was to fully delete our social and get new ones if this account turned out to be the same. I was definitely a stupid 17-year-old, but try not to judge me too harshly. But this account didn't spam our pictures, didn't DM us inappropriate pictures, just interacted with us like any normal school kid would. A little here, a little on our new posts, a little on our story posts, never commenting on our posts. So, finally, we thought it was over. Wrong! Strange things started to happen and became more of an intentional thing than a coincidence. I would post a picture of me and my friend at the park. A couple minutes later, a white truck would pull up in the lot. Eerily close to my car, driver's side door, but we tried not to think too much of it. there were still a few spaces over. Me and my friend were in the swings, basically a straight line of sight of the parking lot. The truck lights remained on, pointing at us for a long time. It got to the point that me and my friend finally started getting worried and anxious, so we hopped off from the swings and decided to take laps around the park instead. The car was far too close to mine for us to be comfortable chancing getting into it at the time. Mind you, it was about 10 p.m. at night, and we were the only ones there. We waited and roamed the park for nearly an hour before the truck finally drove away. That's when we raced to my car and I drove home, looked behind me frequently just in case. This happened in early June, and it kept happening. I didn't really notice it, thought it was a one-off occurrence. It never dawned on my head that it happened after I posted pictures and said where I was with my friends. But I started to see a white truck just about everywhere I posted about, even one that would wait outside my high school when I posted a story about my walk to my mom's store only a mile from our school. Again, young and dumb, I didn't think the worst of it. I thought it was a parent waiting for a kid, plus there's a bunch of people that own all kinds of variations of white trucks in my town. So I never put much worry into seeing them all the time. My friend never mentioned any white truck, and if we were together, we rarely saw any of them. But I started to get nervous of them after one time I was walking to my mom's store. I decided to take a glance at the driver of the truck that sat near the car line every day after school. It was the same, if not a bit older, man from our Walmart survey trip of 2019. It was bizarre, definitely. We were never expecting to see him again, especially since we met him in a few towns over from our own. Yet, lo and behold, he's right there. That's when I walked, probably ran actually, to my mom's store. This kept happening, and I finally knew I was being stalked after seeing him that first time, because I saw him everywhere on foot. Anyway, this is getting long, so I'll fast forward to the last bit that happened on the last day of our shared summer camp in late July 2023. At this point, I was still 17, and since I was older than most of the new campers, I might as well have been considered a staff member. I drove kids to camp and home every night, and they paid me for the gas money, so I was cool with doing it. It didn't bother me, since they were in the same town as me, and there were others further away that counselors typically drove home. This day, I posted all the last day campfire pictures right before I left so I could try and save my phone that was suffering from glitches, lack of data, and didn't let me communicate/call with others because my storage was too full. So I photo dumped a bunch of stuff, and it didn't fix the problem. My phone was essentially broken and all but name. It hardly worked, and I bought my current phone after this occurrence. On top of this, one of the older campers that had visited on the last day, 19 male, didn't have a phone either, but he was also in the car with me. In the back seat, I had 3 campers. One didn't have a phone either, and the other 2 were dead. One was charging theirs in my carport, but didn't think much of it, just turned on the radio full blast and gunned it back home. As I pulled off the back roads of our camp up to the intersection, the light turned green and we went forward. In the lane next to us was a white truck that kept turning its brights on and off. It was a bit weird, so I sped up, but I didn't think much of it. Side note, my best friend, let's call her Anne for this, has a baby. Anne had her kid at 16, so at this point her kid was nearly a year old. Still very fussy in car rides and such. This became important later because Anne was there for the last day of camp too. She left right before we did when her baby became cranky. Eventually, I didn't see the white truck behind me anymore, and I slowed down a bit. It was nearly 9:30 p.m. at this point, late enough for the highway between our towns to be essentially empty. I have this back road that is a bit curvy that leads close to my house and directly to a rich neighborhood. It's the street I typically take to get back to my house from camp if I have no one to take home, and everyone that was a regular in my car called it the detour. It was quite pretty, with a bunch of full evergreen trees and wildlife. The kids, not really kids, but they acted like it, 13 female, 15 male, 15 male, in the back were begging me to go to the detour, since it was the last day of camp. So I caved in and hit on my blinker, turning right onto the back road. Now, listen, I'm not the safest person out there, don't judge me. I'm still basically a kid too, but all the ones in the back love to hang out with windows on the back roads. So I let them stick their heads out of the sunroof, still on the windowsill while holding the bars on top of my car. I went slow, under 10 miles per hour, just so they could do it and not worry about them getting hurt. I mean, there was no one on the back roads. Cops never camp out on these streets, and I was going under the speed limit by like 20. There wasn't really any harm in letting them stick out the windows. Eventually, I let them bully me into taking them around the rich neighborhood that had the cool water fountains and covered bridges on their streets. Apparently, one of the covered bridges caved in, so we had to go around on a super narrow street right next to a large drainage ditch at least 15 to 20 feet deep. As we were going around it, a car comes up behind me. I assumed it was one of the people who lived in the neighborhood, so I was going to speed up to let them get to their house. Finally, we came to a four-way of the rich people's street. Straight forward was a dead end, which is what I originally was going to do. To the left was a broken covered bridge, and to the right was a back around that would take us back to the beginning of the street. But it has no houses / lights back there because the neighborhood is still being built. But let's call him Jake, 19 male, told me to go right. Mind you, one of the campers was sticking their body out of the skylight from the back seat, so I couldn't see out my rearview mirror. I didn't really want to, but I trusted his instincts and turned right. As soon as I did, I started to hear honking behind me. I was a bit startled, and so were the kids in the back seat. I glanced out my side view mirror, but I couldn't see anything past the bright LED lights. I thought it was just because I took so long, so I sped up a bit after I turned right. There was a hook at the end of the hill on the back street, and it makes you tug the steering wheel pretty hard to stay on the road, especially in the dark. The car behind me turned right too. They started flashing their LED brights, honking loudly, and had roll-down windows screaming at us. They kept trying to get in the lane next to us and bump into my car to run us off the road. That is when I knew this was serious. Instantly, I started to scream at the kids in the back seat to sit down, buckle up, and roll up their windows. They barely managed to do that by the time I hit the bender at the end of the hill really hard and gunned it off the street. Driving around the drainage ditch with little problem. I'd done it multiple times. There was no phone in the car to call anyone, least of all the police, so I just ended up speeding down the back streets as the car chased me, trying to run me off the road multiple times. When we came upon the sharp corners, they slowed down. That told me they didn't know this area well, which I used to my advantage. As I was approaching the stop sign, for me to go left or right, my house was to the right, so left it was. I yelled at Jake to check my right because I'm not stopping for the sign. I speed past it, the car. This is about the time I noticed that it was a fucking white truck. Tried to hit my bumper again, and I swerved into someone's yard. The grass was damaged the next day when I drove past it. I booked it down the street, hitting every turn as fast as possible, and eventually I thought I lost the truck. I sped past my high school and onto the highway again, where we got off in the first place. I didn't see the truck behind us, and we were all still freaked out. I took a right to go onto another main way and passed by a closed gas station on the way. Very important in a moment. I stopped at a gas station and handed the kids in the back some cash for them to get themselves a drink and a snack to help them calm down. None of them were crying, thank God, the adrenaline junkies they are. They thought it was more exciting than anything. I told Jake to go watch them in the store and make sure they didn't do anything stupid while I filled up the gas tank. We waited at the gas station for about 20 minutes before I went back onto the road to take them home, just in case. I asked them if they had saw the car at all while they were hanging out the window, and only one of them said they thought they did, but the truck's lights were off. It was the same truck from a town or so over from the intersection in front of the back road to our camp. They followed us for nearly 25 minutes. After I dropped all of them off, I was still a bit shaky and decided to try to see if my phone would call someone that I could talk to about what happened. The only contact that would load was Anne, since she was the last person I had talked to on the phone. With a stroke of luck, my phone actually let me call. She picked up, but all I could hear from her side of the line was her crying. Obviously panicking, I asked her what was wrong, and lo and behold, she shared a story eerily similar to what just happened to me. Apparently Anne's baby started crying so loud she could barely focus on the road, so she pulled into the closed gas station I mentioned earlier, right outside our high school, and I sped past. She was giving her kid their bottle when a white truck pulled into the lot. Immediately she was weary because it was closed, and she was right. Less than 30 seconds later, this truck parked horizontally in front of Anne's car to block her in. She immediately started her car again, locked her doors, and pulled off over the grass curb, blocking her from the street. She was not chancing her baby at all. Anne told me the only thing she remembered about the man was that we saw him years ago at the Walmart. His eyes stared at her like she was just a piece of meat for him to have. As she raced home, the truck caught up to her. She turned onto her back road, running out of gas, and the truck started to flash its lights, honk, run her off the road the entire time. But a couple streets before hers, a little red car pulled out in front of her and started to brake check her as the white truck tried to hit her from behind. It was a mess. She took a chance, sped up, and swung onto the streets to at least lose the red car. The truck booked it after her. Apparently, both of her older brothers were waiting outside for her with some of her friends to help her bring in stuff for her baby. Upon seeing this, as she pulled into the driveway, the white truck sped off. If her brothers weren't outside, that would have been a different story. But anyway, long story short, the truck that followed me all the way back had an accomplice in a red car that followed my friend Anne. When they couldn't catch me, they went for her. Both me and Jake suspected that because I didn't go into the dead end where the man could cut me off, that's probably why it suddenly got violent so quickly. Edit. I never mentioned what happened after this, but the man in the white truck and the other in the little red car were found a town over when there was footage taken of them attempting to kidnap a 7-year-old off a porch and being attacked by their dog. Along with this, we found that there had been several sightings of a white truck around our town, following others doing similar things day after it first happened to us, following cars that had similar descriptions to my friends and I's cars. Our reports were officially filed after we saw the information of the car on Facebook, along with the identity of the man that had been stalking us for years. It took years to get rid of them, but now we don't have to worry about the men anymore. As my peers congratulated me for spending the night in the morgue, I gave them advice to just sing in front of the giant mirror as a distraction if they're ever afraid. I froze in horror as they replied, "What mirror?" Stalker by Demonic Dog 7352. So me and my girlfriend were out smoking at like 4 or 5. It was dark, Alaska winters, and we were just talking on a playground set across the road in the neighborhood. We're lighting, and all of a sudden we see a guy walking down the road from the right. Keep in mind that he came from the right and not the left. So we see him and didn't take it seriously, and he walked, and then he thinks about walking into the playground, and so he starts thinking if he should or not, so he goes back to where he came from, but instead went into the woods that were next to us and watched us. We started panicking and decided to get up and leave. He quickly runs out of the woods and keeps up with us and starts following us down the road. He came from up the road, so it was odd and a red flag. My girlfriend still wanted to go home, so we almost took a shortcut to her house. But our house was maybe 3 or 2 blocks away, so we decided to walk to McDonald's because it was closer and safest. We look back and we're almost there, and he stops following us. Never again. I pointed the gun right between my wife's eyes as she slept, closed my eyes, and squeezed the trigger. I couldn't tell her that I had just spoken to the president of our son's college, letting us know that he had committed suicide in his dorm room. Boyfriend came home, but it wasn't him, by eeniledam. This happened a few months ago, and I've been meaning to post it here, but it honestly freaked me out so bad that I didn't want to write it out for a while. I'm curious about any similar experiences. Some background. I live in a college house owned by the college and close to campus, with 2 of my friends. But my boyfriend has been sort of an unofficial 4th housemate for a while now. He's good friends with many of my friends, and especially the ones who live in the house, so it's safe to say they know him and what he looks like extremely well. This will become important later. Our house is directly next to a big parking lot, which is fully lit with street lights at night, like a grocery store or a mall parking lot. That belongs to one of the college sports facilities, and it's completely empty about 80% of the time, unless there's a game or a practice. This is where my boyfriend and my friends who come to visit will park when they come over. The night this happened, my boyfriend was at his fraternity house for an event, but was planning to come over to our house afterwards. Just me and one other friend were awake and both sitting together on our front porch talking, not drinking or doing anything of the sort, when we saw my boyfriend's car coming down the road parallel to our house in the parking lot. It's important to note that my boyfriend has a very distinct car, foreign car, outside modifications, and unusual color. And we live in a relatively small town where I still, to this day, have never seen anyone with the same car. I wasn't sure for a second it was him, as he usually calls me on his way home from almost anywhere, and he hadn't done that. But as his car got closer and started to turn into the parking lot, I was absolutely certain it was him. Like I said, the lot is fully lit up at night, so not only did I see the car in full light, but I could see through the window enough to see it was him. We thought so much it was him that my friend and I got up and started walking to the lot to greet him. She got over there just a moment sooner than me and waved at him as he was pulling in. But he only looked at her and just kept driving through to the other side of the lot. As it would be in character, we thought surely he was fucking with us and was going to turn around. But we watched as he pulled out of the parking lot fully and drove down the road in the opposite direction he came. I called him immediately, thought maybe he had left something at the fraternity house or was just doing a really elaborate and now slightly annoying bit. When I tell you my jaw dropped when he answered, and I could hear from the background that he was still at the frat house, music, people talking. Even though I could still see his car driving down the road, I asked him if he had been home and left for some reason. He said he hadn't, but he was probably going to leave soon. He asked why, and I just told him I explained later and hung up. My friend was so freaked out she didn't want to talk about it and still doesn't like it when I bring it up. We both saw him, but she definitely got a better look and swears on everything it was him driving. Hell, I know for absolute sure it was his car. We've had a few weird experiences in this house that oddly enough center around my boyfriend, and it's hard to tell if it's more paranormal or glitch in the matrix, but this one absolutely felt like a glitch, especially considering that him coming down our road and turning to the parking lot is a routine thing that happens at least 10 times a week. Guess the universe was just ahead by a few minutes that night and played the track of my boyfriend coming home too early. I asked the fortune teller, what's the worst mistake I'll ever make? She replied, you'll kill 189 people. I turned on the news one day to see a report about a bridge collapsing due to poor infrastructure, and I realized what that fortune teller meant all those years ago. Appearing Wall by BMC25. Short but sweet. I, female 28, have lived with my partner, female 28, for 4 months now. I helped her move in while she had to work, so I saw the place empty. It's a pretty small 3-bedroom, relatively open plan. You walk through the entry through a small hallway where 2 of the bedrooms and the lounge area are located behind doors. At the end of the hallway, you have a kitchen to your right. The bench wraps around the wall to the right and comes out to create a divide to an open lounge and dining area, with floor-to-ceiling bay windows and sliding doors that allow the view and light in, and lead to our deck. I've admired the view many times from the kitchen. I've spent many hours on the deck admiring the same view and speaking to my partner as she cooks or plots around in the kitchen. Now, to the appearing wall. 2 days ago, I was sitting in the lounge/dining area and speaking to my partner in the kitchen. I noticed a quarter wall above the kitchen bench. It runs along the whole length of the kitchen, and I've never, not once, noticed it. I asked my partner, and she assured me it had always been there. I cannot unsee this wall, no matter which way I approach the kitchen or dining/lounge area. I swear it wasn't there 3 days ago. This also aligns with a weird experience I had with my neighbor the day before noticing the new wall. The neighbor from behind my house was walking in our shared laneway as I was letting my dog in the house after I got home from work. I hadn't met him yet. I had seen him over the fence as my dad does allow me to see over the fence and further past his house, but never spoken to him. He approached the fence and started talking to me. He was acting as if we had spoken previously, not by anything he mentioned, just the way he spoke. I told him I was enjoying the new house. It was completely renovated before we began renting, so it was really nice. He then told me he had seen the house arrive in 3 pieces on the truck. We knew the house was brought in, but as far as I knew in the video I had seen, they craned in the whole house as 1 piece. I saw it strapped to the truck and everything. I asked my partner to show me the video, and she doesn't remember anything about it. If the house came in pieces, it would make sense this wall exists. That's not what I remember. Every time I look at that wall, I feel a little more crazy. "It's safe. You can come out now," my father said, his blue eyes shining upon me. He's been saying that for hours. But that wouldn't change the fact that my dad's eyes were green. I Think I Met Myself by narddawgcornell. I live in a fairly small city, and I'm pretty familiar with most of the area. I work from home, so I don't get out much during the weekdays, but on the weekends, I usually take long walks to clear my head. Saturday afternoon, I decided to walk around a part of my town I don't normally go to. It's not far from where I live, but it's not an area I really explored. Mostly industrial, not a lot of foot traffic, and not much to see besides warehouses. Anyway, I'm walking down this long, straight road when I see someone coming towards me. It was a guy about the same height as me, wearing a hoodie, jeans, and a backpack. As he got about 15 to 20 feet away, we are now staring at each other. At this point, I genuinely feel like I'm having a panic attack. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had. I know this person. I've seen him before. It's me. Not in the sense that I thought we looked alike. I immediately recognized everything about him. The way he was walking, his posture, the way his hands were resting in his pocket. It was me. When we passed each other, neither one of us said a word. We just continued to look each other up and down. It was the feeling that we were two versions of the same person. The expression on his face was confused and fearful. His eyes were wide, and it was like he was thinking the exact same thing I was thinking. I didn't see him walk away. When I turned back around after an awkward long time staring at each other, I waited what felt like 10 to 20 seconds before turning around again, and by that point, there was no sign of him anywhere. There were no alleys or places he could have ducked into. I walked back to where we had passed each other, and nothing, no trace of him. It was like he just vanished. At first, I tried to brush it off. I figured I was just imagining things, but I think I'm trying to convince myself. I tried Googling this, but the results were just about urban legends or stories about doppelgangers being some kind of bad omen. Nothing useful. My friends say I'm probably just stressed out or seeing things, but honestly, I can't shake the feeling that I slipped into some kind of parallel universe, or that there was some glitch in the Matrix happening. I've also noticed I keep having deja vu about random things. Has anyone ever experienced something like this, or am I just losing it? I swear I didn't hallucinate this. Every day, my pets kill each other, believing themselves superior to one another. If only they knew I never made a heaven, only a hell. Trash reappeared on coworker's desk the next morning. By katratkit. I've experienced several glitches of the Matrix throughout my life, but since this one was so recent, I figured I'd share. Yesterday I was chilling in my coworker's office and my vape was starting to burn out. I got a new coil out and changed it at her desk. Normally I do a full soak/clean of the tank while changing coils, but I was being lazy, so I did everything there. I used a few paper towels to take out the old coil so I wouldn't get juice all over my hands, and bundled it up and immediately threw it away into a trash can. We have a building custodian that takes out the trash and changes the liner every single day regardless of how full they are. This morning, apparently the old coil was sitting straight up on my coworker's desk right in front of her keyboard. She didn't even know what it was and asked if it was mine. And I was like, yes, but it's trash that I threw away yesterday? Genuinely no idea. The only thing we could think of is maybe the custodian saw it in the trash, didn't know what it was, and thought maybe it would be important / not supposed to be trash, and took it out as a kind of gesture. But again, it was bundled up in a pretty thick wad of paper towel because it didn't want to get vape juice all over my hands or get it onto her desk. So it's difficult for me to imagine it even falling out on a visible way for the custodian to even notice in the first place. And even so, it would have been covered in oily juice residue, and was still when she found it on her desk this morning. So I think the logical assumption would be trash either way. The other explanation is that somehow it fell out onto her desk or onto the floor when I was throwing it away. But again, I had to use a firm grip to unscrew it from the tank in the first place, and then wad it up around the coil after removing it, and immediately went to the trash can from there, which was about 2 feet away. And I know I heard a soft little thud of it falling in, too. Like the weight of the coil was definitely inside to create an audible feedback. We also checked the surface of her desk where I was sitting and didn't see any residue or anything indicating it was there. But even so, that still would have required the custodian to have moved it to the position right in front of her keyboard. And he never touches anything on her desk. No dust, tidying up, etc. like that. Maybe it was somehow on the floor, he could have noticed it, but also sort of a stretch to me. He does not vacuum, sweep, or anything like that either. Literally the only thing he does is our trash bins and the windows. Anyway, it's completely within the realm of reason that it's human error on my end, and the custodian moved it thinking it was important. But my distinct memory and previous experience knowing our custodian tells me it's impossible. Just one of those weird things, I guess. Thanks for listening if you did. OP also did tell me one time they dropped a sticky note that was important for work, and the custodian didn't pick it up. So the custodian picking anything up would be very odd and very out of character for them. So I get where the glitch in the Matrix definitely comes from for this one. You always stand up to a bully, I told my son one time after picking him up from school. As I lay on the floor bleeding to death, I regretted the foolish advice I had given my little darling after watching him throw down my phone to face his stepfather instead of calling 911. I saw my parents' doppelgangers by Megster333. Okay, so I just joined the subreddit recently and figured to post this story with the hopes that someone has experienced a similar experience or maybe has an explanation. I have been experiencing so many weird glitch in the Matrix experiences recently, and I'm thinking of making a separate post for them. This happened to me, 22 female, about a month ago or so. I've been thinking about the experience a lot recently, and a friend of mine recommended that I post it on here. This experience has kept me up at night recently, and the more I think about it, the more unexplainable it gets. It was Saturday, and I enjoyed filling up my car on the weekends before the week begins. I need to get gas, and before I left the house, I told my dad I would be back in a few minutes. I just need to get gas down the road at my local Kroger because it was 3 cents off a gallon, and I'll be back shortly after. Anyways, for some reason I have an overbearing dad who refuses to believe I know how to pump gas on my own, even though I've been doing it for over 6 years. I leave the house to get the gas, and as I mentioned, the Kroger is right down the road. I have to take a massive left turn to get into the area, so I like to drive all the way around to avoid the massive turn, aka making a 2-minute drive into a 7-minute drive. As I'm making the drive about 3 to 4 miles in, I notice my parents' car approach me and begin driving close behind me in my rearview mirror. Their car is unique, as the color is a specific light grayish blue. I roll my eyes as I'm thinking, wow, they seriously think I can't get gas on my own and are following me to make sure I can? I approach the stop sign and quickly check my side view mirror to get a closer look to make sure it was them, obviously annoyed. In my mirror, I see it's my parents driving. I know so intensely that it was my parents, like I know what my parents look like. There's something off, I notice, though their expressions are completely blank and just seem empty. I can't explain it. But it had to be my parents. But, like, all the energy from them was gone. They looked like NPCs. I decided to shrug it off and keep driving just the last stretch to the Kroger. As I turned into the Kroger, I noticed my parents were no longer behind me. I pull up to the pump, pull out my phone, and check my parents' location. They are at home. There's no way they had enough time to make it back home from where I had last seen them on the road. I finish pumping gas and make my way home, still confused by the encounter. Later that night, I asked in a laughing manner to my mom, "Hey, Mom, why were you and Dad following me earlier?" She looked at me super confused and says, "What are you talking about?" I explained what I saw on my way to get gas, and she replied with, "Dad and I hadn't even left the house today." I must preface by saying that my parents are incredibly religious, conservative, straightforward people and would not prank me like this. I know with absolute certainty they did not leave the house, so please tell me, who was following me? My pretty young wife loyally held my hand as my organs were shutting down and old age finally claimed me. Her tears were real and our last moments together were tender and loving. Yet my final thoughts were still a disturbing one. Weren't we both the same age when we were married just a year ago? Resolved Glitch by Almost-Jaded. Good to know there's some explanations for some of these really weird ones. Thought I'd share a recent near glitch experience, although I'm still stuck here in no harm in road ramp land. Went on a business trip with my ex-wife last weekend. While we were in San Antonio Airport, she bought me a bottle of Fiji water. I never get that brand because the square bottle annoys me. Fly home, I take an Uber home. As I'm packing bags into the Uber, I realized I forgot my water bottle. Oh well. Fast forward a few days, I picked the ex up for a work-related meeting. After I dropped her off, I noticed the Fuji bottle on the floorboards of the car I'm driving, which I haven't driven since returning from Texas. She didn't have a water bottle with her while we were hanging out, and the remaining water is exactly where my lost bottle was. Oh my god, glitch. Call her back up as I'm driving off. Remember when you bought me that water bottle in Texas? It's not a glitch, honey. I picked it up at the airport when you forgot it and put it in my purse by habit. It must have fallen out in your car. Really, Because for a second there, a bottle I know was left at the airport appeared in a car I hadn't driven since before taking the trip. As she would have had no reason to pick it up in the airport, I didn't think that to be a likely explanation, but there it is. Sometimes it's just a cigar. Breaking news. After 20 years, a police sketch of the fugitive dubbed the Qrosz Killer has finally been released. My entire body grows cold as I turn to look at my husband of 15 years sleeping peacefully beside me, his face illuminated by the TV's glow. Time Glitch in Washington State by Sunnerth. I posted this a few months ago, but I'm a Reddit rookie, new account, so I need some karma per the subreddit rules. Drove through a town stuck in the past. Okay, so this happened in April 2023. My mom and I were on a road trip in another state, driving on a state highway north of the major interstate, probably 60 or so miles. We wanted a better experience than the typical highway driving, so it was a great scenic route. We were driving through vast swamps of farmland and small communities spread out every 45 to 60 minutes of the drive. So we're out there, if you will, hours away from the nearest big city. It was absolutely beautiful, by the way. I was in the passenger seat, just enjoying the scenery. About 3/4 of the way to the destination, the speed dropped to 25 and the road took a hard bent left turn into a small town. Unlike the other towns, where you could see them on the approach, slow down, and drive through them, this one came up abruptly, and it kind of felt like the highway just dumped us into this town. It was very, very tiny, maybe 3 blocks total, and we were out. But what we saw was crazy. 50s themed diner, old gas station with that traditional pumps, a Wild West themed general store, and the craziest part, there were a handful of classic cars from the 40s and 50s that all appeared to be in great condition. It looked like they were just parked. There weren't any car shows or people walking around viewing them. My mom wanted to stop and get some coffee, but something in my gut was off, and I said, hell no, this place is freaky. She then made a comment that it felt like the place was right out of the 50s and they kept the theme going. To me, it was giving major sundown town vibes, or something. I couldn't place my finger on it. Something was weird. It took all of 25 seconds to drive through and back to a faster speed limit, and we were off. We wrapped the vacation up a few days later, and that was that. I've recalled that experience quite a few times these past few months, and finally last night I wanted to look into this place. I traced our route on the Google Maps, and after searching for quite a bit, eventually found it and checked it out on Street View. Much to my surprise, this Street View looked nothing like my memory. The general store was different, the diner was different, and the damn gas station that was a cool retro pumps? Gone, and in place was an RV storage with a few tiny campers. The image date was from after our trip. Perfect, they changed it. No issue, I'll check on a picture for 2022 before our trip. Much to my utter horror, the only thing different in the older image were the campers. I asked my mom about it today, and she explained the town exactly as I remembered it. then also brought up how I made a comment about feeling uneasy and how she wished we stopped anyways. Well, I showed her the Street View images, and she got freaked out too. And yes, the town on Google Maps is the same one we drove through. There aren't any other places on the road that cut hard left. I'm 100% certain, and my mom was able to zoom in and eventually find it herself. Yes, I literally asked her to do that for my own sanity, because this is freaky. I've been looking through other experiences, but can't find anything similar to this. Has anyone heard or experienced firsthand anything like it? My heart sank when I read the text, "They are coming," followed by my info. I quickly awoke my captor lying next to me, letting him know we'd have to prepare for our final stand against the police. Did I Slip to Another World? By Real Tension 7442. I was at school when a girl I barely knew approached me and started talking in an overly familiar manner. I didn't question it, as I realized that she was hitting on me, but eventually she said that she missed hanging out with me and Ryan. Ryan was a friend of mine, but not the kind of friend who I hung out with, and I certainly had never hung out with this girl. She was a year below me, so I didn't know her from any lessons or whatever. So as not to sound rude, I went along with it as she recounted all the dinner breaks we had spent as a trio. Again, this simply didn't happen. Long story short, we ended up in a short relationship, but we're not compatible and parted ways. During this relationship, I did decide to ask her if pretending to know me was her way of flirting. She got quite offended at this. 2 years later, I'm walking down the street and a girl stops me and is over the moon to see me. I have no clue who this is, but she knows my name, and to be polite, I asked her how she's been and all that. She says that we have to catch up sometime and that I should add her on Facebook. A couple weeks later, I see her again and she asked me why I hadn't added her on Facebook. I played it cool, asking why she didn't add me. It's because she couldn't find me, which does actually make sense as I took my stepdad's name earlier that year. So I took a gamble and said that I couldn't spell her name, hoping that it wasn't Kim Smith or something. Luckily, it was hard to spell, so she writes it down. We meet up and she starts reminiscing about the times we spent together. And just like the first girl I mentioned, we were apparently a trio with another minor friend. I asked this friend, Haley, about her, and she confirmed that they were inseparable friends and found it hilarious that I couldn't remember her. But I always considered Haley to be a loner, so that surprised me. In conclusion, I've had 2 girls both claiming we were close friends, and I remember neither. Is this a strange way of hitting on someone, or have I slipped realities? It's worth noting that I'm introverted, so I don't know how I seem to have made such an impression on these strangers, and I'm quite the loner. I'm unlikely to forget people who were friendly towards me. I also want to point out that I am not a believer in glitches. Love to read them, but mainly to ponder how they could be real. As an additional bit of information, I share no common interest with either girl. They only seemed interested because of my apparent bond we formed. Once we started speaking for, in my mind, the first time, they quickly grew bored and became strangers once again. In case it's asked, neither girl knew anything too personal about me. Although the second one did casually mention that my mom and her dad worked together. I don't know how she knew that, but I got her dad's name and confirmed with my mom that he was a colleague of hers. Yesterday, history was made when we detected a radio signal from an intelligent species in a distant galaxy. This morning, a decoded and translated signal from 100 million light-years closer appeared on the computer monitor that said, "We're coming." I've never been able to explain it. By J.B. Blitz 9. Years and years ago, when I was still but a teenager, living in a small home with my parents and younger brother, in around 2009 to 2010, it was the early morning. Having woken up about an hour earlier, my mom was telling me about how I was to take my younger brother to school later that day as she couldn't make it. Dad had already gone to work. Standing in the living room on the creaky floor, I see my brother descending the stairs to my left. It's one of those staircases where you can see just about the full flight with small wooden pillars lining the length of it. The gaps between those providing a clear view of those who was going up and down them. So my brother descends the stairs. Dull blue PJ bottoms that are slightly too big. PJ top of the same matching color. I see his tuft of dark brown hair and his excited skips in his way down the stairs. I hear the loud creaks of each step down the flight. I could swear I heard slight intake of air and hushed giggling. My brother back then was the excitable sort. He would sprint from place to place, bounce into things and people in his wake. Still true to a certain extent. So he comes bouncing down the stairs and reaches the living room floor. The floorboard creaks and now he's out of my sight. My eyes still mostly engaged in speaking with my mom. He rushes from my left around behind me. I feel the slight displacement of wind as he rushes past, a quick move as to not have him bump into me. I step forward to do this. "Sorry, Jay." I look to my right, expecting him to be there. Nothing, not a soul. He was still upstairs, sleeping heavily. I turned to my mom, who had since turned away and walked into the kitchen. She saw my confusion. I spoke to her about it. She looked frightened. She has always been easy to fright. We don't speak often of it, but from time to time it comes up on a topic of spirits and stuff. I'm not a believer generally, but nothing has felt quite like that. My mind plays games with me, making me hear and see things that were not there. Or maybe they were. Because I could swear I saw him. I swear I heard him. Nowadays, I say it was out of the corner of my eye. But it was much more of a glance than that, and I simply haven't had the heart to admit it out loud. I try and explain away, and often do without telling the full story. But with all these details, I cannot. But I wasn't tired. I had been up for a while and had had a decent night's sleep before. I wasn't ill. I highly doubt the monoxide out, and I've never seen anything like this before or after. It just bugs me, and I can't reason with it. It's not even the biggest occurrence in the world, far from it. But I'm just at a loss. Seeing that my baby had already fallen asleep in my arms, I decided to also take a nap as soon as I finished putting all the frozen food I bought into the freezer. When I woke up, I realized that being a single mother had taken too much of a toll on my sleep schedule, as the water from the thawing bag of frozen fries dripped down my arm and chest. Lost an Hour by Legal Opportunity 851. Another post in the sub reminded me of my own experience losing an hour unexplained. I appreciate if anyone could make some sense of this for me. I was at work on a university campus. One of my consultants wanted to check in with me on a project over coffee. So I met him at a local coffee shop that was 2 buildings over from where I work. I met up with him at 11 a.m. Because I had a 12 p.m. appointment with a supplier, I sent a reminder on my phone for 11:45 a.m. and 11:55 a.m. so I could wrap up the conversation with the consultant in time for my 12 p.m. meeting. It's a coffee shop, so there wasn't any alcohol involved. I remember having a tea that I normally have, and I don't think I ordered any food. The consultant is a good friend. I've worked with him at other companies. He was stopping by, off the clock, to discuss recent trends in the higher education space to add to an article he was writing. Common practice in his industry. So my alarm goes off at 11:45 a.m. and 11:55 a.m., and we say our goodbyes. I walk back to my office, which is literally half a block at best from the coffee shop. I take the stairs up to my office, and I'm immediately greeted by the receptionist inquiring to where I was. She further explains that my supplier showed up on time, waited 15 to 20 minutes for me to arrive, then left in frustration. I remember looking at the clock on the TV screen at the entrance and seeing that it was 12:59 p.m. I then ran to my office and looked at my PC. It was 1 p.m. It was so surreal to lose an hour and have no idea how it happened. I don't feel lightheaded or compromised in any way. I was in a public setting the entire time. My phone was reading the correct time when I double-checked it afterwards. I ended up having to write a lengthy apology to the supplier. I meant to ask the consultant how much time we spoke for, but wasn't sure how to bring it up without sounding crazy, given that he was a professional contact. I didn't want to create any weird vibes. Any ideas? That sounds like your anxiety talking. I'm sure your friends don't really hate you. My last therapy session plays back in my head as I tread water 6 miles off the coast of Florida. The sound of laughter and a motor fading in the distance. Someone I knew died twice in 2 different ways, and it was in the newspapers. By wildberryquilting. I went to high school in a very small, one-stoplight sort of town. A few years after school, I was catching up with an old friend, and she told me how these 2 boys that we both knew pretty well had passed away. We will call them Josh and Sean. I asked what happened, and she sent me a news article about how they were working in a shop and an air compressor had exploded and killed them both. Fast forward a few years later, and somehow it came up in a conversation I was having with my dad. I decided to try to find the news article I had previously read about it. Instead, I found an article about how Josh had been shot by people who broke into his house looking for drugs. There was actually a lot of details in the article about the incident, and it was an unsolved crime. There was no mention of Sean at all, and I couldn't find any article about anything happening to him. I don't have any connections any longer to anyone in the town, so I can't check to see if anyone else remembers it the original way. It's just crazy because I remember vividly reading both articles. I know for a fact it wasn't just someone with the same name for two reasons. First, he has a very unusual last name, and it was a very small town. Second, there were actually pictures of him provided in both articles, and it was 100% the kid I knew from school. Another strange twist is that I looked up the story again just now to see if there was anything new. It seems the case was solved and 4 or 5 people went to prison for it. The second story has also now been featured in an episode of a TV series that I never heard of. I'm considering trying to track it down so I can watch it. Went to the hospital to stop seeing the little girl everyone else can't see. When the medicine took effect, all I could do was act like my family and hospital staff were still there to trick her. A Parcel That Was Never There by Spidemman. What I'm about to share just happened a few minutes before writing this post, and I swear to God this is true. I was told to pick up a parcel in our apartment mailbox before going home. As I was about to pick up the parcel, our mailbox did not contain anything other than an envelope for our electric bill. After getting the bill, I put my hand inside the box to thoroughly check if I missed it because the parcel was so small. After confirming there was nothing inside the mailbox, I then proceeded to call my girlfriend to tell her that the parcel was not left in the mailbox. I then talked to the security on duty to confirm if there was a parcel left under our name, and he told me to just double check. So I did, and when I got back, the parcel was there, right by the door of the mailbox. And it's not a small parcel, it's a plastic t-shirt, which would not have been missed by my hand while checking the first time. After that, I got goosebumps and realized it was very weird for that to have happened. 1. Nobody might have put it back since I was just a few feet away from the mailbox. 2. The mailbox is 5 inches tall and wide, which by touch to the back wall means you've reached everything there is to reach. And 3, the gosh darn item is fitted in there that you need exert a little bit of pull force to even get it out. If anyone's experienced the same, please share, because I'm thinking of supernatural occurrences aside from it being a glitch in the Matrix. Knowing that my abuser would eventually kill me the moment I was trapped with them, I planned to silently ask for help the last chance I got. But as I saw our guests and my soon-to-be wife joking about the wedding topper, a groom being dragged by the bride, I realized no one would take me seriously. Classic Object Doubling Story by Qrosz178. This story isn't anything crazy, but it's always confused me. So I help out at a summer camp, and last year I was actually given the responsibility to do a little research project with the kids. Long story short, it involved each team of kids having a whiteboard to write their findings during the project down and present at the end. Rather than purchasing 5 whiteboards, I opted to get some large sheets of cardstock laminated so they'd be able to be used with a dry erase marker. I don't have pictures or receipts, but the amount of things I witnessed to confirm what I did in preparation for the project and how nothing was amiss till the day of the project is weird. So I originally got the idea for cheap whiteboards when I saw a pack of 5 big sheets of white cardstock at the store for a few dollars and was like, perfect, I'll do 5 teams. Took the package to the print shop to get them laminated, I bought 5. I said I want 5 laminated. They laminated 5, so no problem or comment on a miscount. And I paid for 5 laminations. Brought them out to my car and counted them. 5. Months later, after spending all that time setting up for the project for them, 5 envelopes of clippings of info on 5 ancient tablets, each put with a whiteboard to give to the 5 teams. I spent so much time around these 5 laminated sheets. So obviously when I handed out the pack of tools to each of the teams and found that I had 6 whiteboards, I was so confused. I ran around the room trying to find what team was missing their whiteboard, but each one had already. All 6 were the same, even all that had the cuts on the corner where I rounded the sharp plastic out with scissors so they wouldn't poke any of the kids. The worst scene I ever saw working for the FBI was a small family tortured to death. The worst scene I ever saw for CBS was where a deranged father tried turning his $3 into a set of Russian nesting dolls. Missing Purse by Black Eyes. I have many stories like this, but today was the oddest one. After therapy, I was picked up and taken to a cafe, where I stayed until my roommate got off work. I picked up my purse, my stream deck, and moved out to the car. I said my goodbyes and placed my purse on top of the car before I left, and then took it and placed it in the car by my feet. I remember the familiar jangle of the keychain on it and the weight of my purse on my shoulder. But when we got home, my purse was nowhere to be seen. I looked in the back seat and under the front seat, but it wasn't there. So we drove back to the cafe, where my other roommate had put it behind the counter, claiming I left it on the chair for the table I was at. Me. Oh, I could have sworn I grabbed my purse. Thank you for putting it in the back here, though. Roommate A. I could have sworn you did too, but I saw it and thought I'd bring it home for you. Me. Today has just been odd, I guess. Roommate A. What do you mean? I then go on to explain a bit and say thank you again and return to the car. My other roommate and I believe in quantum immortality and the like, thinking our consciousness keeps switching to different dimensions. We joked about how the cafe might have been blown up or something, but to be safe, we took the back roads home. Let's see, Grandma should have a comma in it, otherwise people will think you want to eat me. Graham explained. Then she reminded me not to tell my parents where Grandpa went or what she had been feeding me while they were on vacation. Elevator Guy by Overhopeful. This happened a few years back at my college dorm. Roommate and I, both around the age of 19 probably, were coming back to the dorms after dark. It's one of those buildings where you have to scan your university ID card to get in, unless someone from the inside lets you in. There's no other way. We walk up to the building and see someone maybe 10 feet ahead of us scan their card and go inside. The key here is that he just was far enough ahead of us to where as soon as he goes inside and the door shuts itself, we are there scanning our IDs to open the door for ourselves. Once inside the lobby area, there is one elevator on either side. These elevators are maybe just around 10 feet from the entrance door where we had just walked in. As we walk inside the building, we see the person who went in before us walk inside the elevator and the door shuts just as we approach it. The same elevator he just got into. I press the button, and to my surprise, the door opens instantly. Like, instantly. As soon as the doors closed, they were opening again, except this time, there was nobody inside. I hesitated, but walked into the elevator and pushed my floor button. The energy between me and my roommate felt tense, and I didn't say anything as I was trying to rationalize what I just saw in my brain. My roommate spoke up first, saying, "Did you see that guy?" and verified that I wasn't the only one who had seen it. We continued trying to come up with some kind of explanation and came to nothing. Even if the elevator guy only went up one floor, there was nowhere near enough time for the elevator to go up and come back down in time. Again, the doors closed with him inside mere seconds before they reopened after I pushed the button. Never experienced something like this since then. Still spooks me. My dog has come to me for food every night since I got him a week ago. I'm not sure what will happen when I run out of limbs, but I'm almost out of fingers, and all I can do is hope it will be quick. Random Guy's personal info appears in Jeep by Fresh Sleeves. First post on this sub. This past summer, my mother works from home, so doesn't go out much. Decided to turn in her lease early on her 24 Jeep Wrangler. Important to note, she's the first owner to get it with 3 miles. She never really went out than shopping, and when she did, she would go with my stepfather. She figured herself and him could just share one car. So myself, mother, and stepfather took a day on the weekend to completely deep clean her Jeep before returning it to the dealership. It should be noted as well, my mother was very meticulous with keeping the car clean, so it was clean inside and out frequently. While cleaning, my stepfather pulls an envelope from under the passenger rear seat. It was thick like a book and sealed shut. Originally, I thought it was possibly the paperwork that came with the Jeep when she got it. When we opened it, it was all the information about a gentleman who lived 2 states over from us. And it wasn't just this guy's name or picture. It was sensitive info, like really private. Inside this envelope was a job application for a local police department, some copies of criminal records. He wasn't the best driver, apparently. And all of his information, including social security, legal copy of his birth certificate with the stamp, all his high school and college transcripts, and a legal copy of his license, as well as a letter to the chief of police. The thing that was more strange was that this information was dated back to 2014, almost a decade ago from when we found it. We managed to track down the guy through Facebook miraculously and got in touch with his wife. She stated that he hasn't been in law enforcement in years and has a totally new career. We asked if he worked in auto mechanics, to which she said no, and he had never even been to our state. Both my parents and I, as well as his wife, were completely stumped and couldn't find out how basically this guy's entire life info from a decade ago got into the back of a 2024 Jeep. Curious to know what others may think. My wife squeezed my hand with tears in her eyes as the revolutionary device began to display our comatose daughter's first communication in years. I remember everything. The text kept repeating. My wife cried with delight, but my heart sank as I realized I'd have to kill her. I want to get a few things off my chest regarding the experience I had about 20 years ago. By Jimmy John J.J., 1999. I'm not sure what I'm looking for here, but I just want to share something. Background: I'm a young professional with a good job, pension, master's degree, etc. I travel lots, ride motorcycles, and I'm in a stable long-term relationship. No medications. That's me, a pretty normal person, though I definitely have an open mind. When I was about 14 years old, I had a few paranormal experiences that have never left me. All pretty benign in my opinion. First one, I had a dream that I woke up from. I thought about the dream and remembered it. 100% remembered it. A week later, it came true. It was similar to deja vu in how benign the situation was. But I was, and am, 100% certain I dreamt something very specific and it came true. A lot of people mistake deja vu for a dream coming true, but they are very different experiences. 2. I got a phone call from an acquaintance who actually is an adopted third cousin or something like that. I had only met the kid once at a family function and never saw him before or after. I hadn't even heard the guy's name before that function, but I got a call from him randomly one day, landline, and he acted like we had just gotten off the phone, accidentally disconnected. And he knew lots of stuff that had been happening to me as if I had just been telling him about my week. He acted weirded out when I tried to say we hadn't been talking and I don't know what he's talking about. I totally could have been an elaborate prank, but he and everyone I knew swore up and down it wasn't. The prank could have been that he found out we had some mutual friend and they thought it would be funny to play a prank. To this day, I've never been pranked like that. Ironically, I got shit for calling him, even though he called me, because, as I said, he was adopted and came from a troubled home. Apparently, he had been abusing his adopted parents, who were the ones that I was remotely related to. I never heard from him or his name again. It was super weird. Number 3. I was babysitting my neighbor who hadn't gotten home from school. I would wait for him at his house. I laid down on the couch to take a nap or something. Next thing I know, I was hearing, or more like engulfed by a super low frequency hum. Super loud, or so it seemed. Everything was white and bright, and it felt like I had sleep paralysis. I have had sleep paralysis here and there in my life, but that was the only time I experienced the hum and the bright lights. These are the most unexplainable things of my life, and what caused me to post this is that it's just occurred to me that this all happened around the same time. And since that time, I've really not had much similar events happen. The only other option being confession. I stared at my wife and children as I selected poison, believing it was the best if my secret died with me. Watching helplessly while the gas started to fill up the room, I heard the voice of my tormentor through the speaker stating, "As promised, your family will never learn of your sins." I heard my boyfriend's voice walking up the stairs, but he wasn't home. By FreshShelves. My boyfriend said I could post here to get off my chest and see if y'all could help me figure out what happened. So a couple of years ago, my boyfriend and I downloaded Life 360 so we could know the exact location of each other in case we need to call the police for each other's location. I had a rough living situation. I moved in with my boyfriend and his mother right after I turned 18 in their apartment they lived in since my boyfriend was a kid. Well, it was about 2 months of me living there when my boyfriend's mom was taking him to work, and I got a notification that he left. Well, since I would be home alone for an hour, I would run myself a bubble bath to relax. A little bit later, I heard my boyfriend's footsteps coming up the stairs. He was the only one of the three of us to wear heavy boots, so his footsteps were very distinct. Then I heard his voice call out to me while still walking up the steps. "Baby, I'm home." I was really confused because he had just left and there was no way he could be home already. I picked my phone to see if he had texted me that work was called off, but as I locked my phone, I got a notification they had just pulled into work. I started freaking out and slowly getting out of the tub and wrapped a towel around me, trying to listen out for whoever must have broken in. The footsteps started again and my boyfriend's voice calls out again. "Baby?" The footsteps come right to the bathroom door and stop. I stand there for God knows how long until I just rip the door open expecting the worst, but the hallway was empty. I checked all 3 rooms upstairs, but they were empty. I checked downstairs, but no one was there, and all the doors and windows were locked. We moved out a couple months later, and whatever mimicked my boyfriend's voice and footsteps followed us to the new place and mimicked my voice for my boyfriend. The oracle's eyes peeled open, and then she ominously turned to the emperor and said, "You shall be devoured by a terrible beak when the last snow melts." By winter's end, when every bird in his empire had been killed, the emperor gleefully celebrated by treating himself to an ocean swim. And then he felt something wrap around his ankle. More crazy experiences I had that may connect to my last post. By FreshShelves. I've got a few more stories to tell. My boyfriend and I moved out of the apartment and into a trailer, and everything was quiet for a while, which we were extremely thankful for. After some time passed, we started seeing a tall, inky black shadow figure that was too tall to stand up completely. We would see a black mass shoot out of our bathroom door that was about a foot away from our bedroom door, and it would disappear into the wall across the hall. We would hear weird whispering that couldn't be explained. We just ignored it as best we could, hoping that it would just go away. It stopped for a while again, at least for me it did. Fast forward a couple months, I was in a horrible dark place mentally. It started again with me at work. I would feel kid-sized hands on my thigh, and I would hear a young kid's voice calling my name and asking where I was all throughout my shift. One day, my manager asked me to check and see if the door that leads outside for the stairwell was shut. I'm going to try to do my best to describe the layout of the stairwell, so bear with me. So you walk in, to your right, there is a deep recess under the stairs for storage that's typically pretty well lit. Then the stairs start, and standing at the bottom, you can look up and see the handrails going all the way up to the top. If you walk past the stairs, there's a narrow walkway where the outside is. This is my first time going in, so I looked around to find the door my manager was talking about. When I looked to where the storage recess was, I saw this sickly white skin and bony thing crouched into the corner looking at me. It had these long, bony fingers/hands, and so were its feet. I ran to the end of the room and found the door, so I slammed the door shut and turned around to run back out the way I just came. When I ran past the stairs, I stupidly thought to look up. When I did, I saw the thing from the storage hole crouching on the railing about 7 stories up and jumped down to the 2nd floor railing. I ran out of the room and down the hall and outside. I told my manager that I don't want to be in the laundry room for a while because it was right across the hall from that room. I did have to go in there again a couple days later, but there was so much more light in there than the last time. But when I asked my coworker that used those stairs often, they say it's always super bright in there. I was telling my boyfriend about it a few days later, but he cut me off before I could describe the thing I saw and said he's been seeing the same thing I saw at our trailer, watching him from behind corners of the walls. We decided to ignore it the best we could, and it stopped with him, but it got worse with me that I won't go into now, or this would be even longer. So I may post the other experiences that made my boyfriend and I leave our place for a few hours because it got so bad. But fast forward about 6 months, I was unemployed, so I was home alone during the day while my boyfriend was at work. I started seeing black masses watching me behind corners, getting closer to me on my bed every day. And I would hear voices in the trailer all day. But I kept it to myself because I thought I was losing it. Well, there was one day I had enough because I had saw it looking at me from the corner of the open bedroom door a couple of feet away from me on my bed. So my boyfriend called me on his break. I told him about everything happening, and he tried to ease my mind by saying that I may just be tired and seeing things that aren't there. Well, when I started agreeing that he might be right, I saw a huge handprint with what looked like pointy nails slowly sinking into the memory foam mattress we had propped up against the wall in front of our bathroom. I freaked out. This thing has trapped me in my bedroom. The only way out was through a window that won't open, or to go through where that thing just showed me its hands. I said goodbye to my boyfriend, and I grabbed my shoes and ran through where that thing just was and booked it outside and stayed outside for hours until my boyfriend came home. Sharks will go deep before a hurricane. Birds will shelter before the strike of a sudden storm, and even street dogs will make for higher ground before a tsunami breaks land. Researchers have long known that animal behavior can predict large-scale disasters, so our working theory with a huge spike in animal suicides around the globe is that something big is coming, and it's not worth fleeing from. Two sleep paralysis demons of the same species, by Chance Expression 650. So, for context, I had a period of time during my senior year and a portion of my mission when I would get sleep paralysis. It usually isn't like these experiences. It only happened 2 times. The first time was during my senior year. It started off as it usually does. I woke up and my body wouldn't move. I tried to turn on my lamp. I think I moved my arms towards it and then blinked, and it was back to where it was. This is the usual thing that happens to me. But this time, I thought it would be scary if there was a person in the room. And all of a sudden, there was a mangled girl on top of me. I could still breathe, so it wasn't the same experience as what people usually say happened to them, but it was on top of me. Now, what it looked like was pale white and had streaks of black that looked like black paint that Arnold had on in Predator, just all over her body. I usually don't scream when weird things happen to me. I was very scared, but I was able to stay semi-calm. I kept telling myself that I'm still semi-dreaming and was able to wake myself up by breathing hard. As soon as I turned on my lamp, she was gone. That was also the last time I had sleep paralysis until I started my mission. There was a difference between my mission sleep paralysis and my senior year paralysis. During this sleep paralysis wave, I would say it was more like an out-of-body experience. I would be awake, like sit up, turn, and look at the wall or around the room. I would be able to see the room just the same as I could when I wake up, which I thought was weird because when I did wake up, I would wake up lying down, my eyes closed, not sitting up or in the position that I was in when I was having the sleep paralysis. Now, the second demon that I saw was also pale white with black stripes all over his body. When this one happened, I woke up to see the door open and a person crawling in. I could see the room very well because of the street lights outside. He came to the foot of my bed and had the biggest grin. Then he looked at my mission companion that I shared a room with. Now, during this one, the weird thing I remember is I felt no fear. When he looked at my companion, I actually got super pissed off at the demon, so I lunged at him, but he held up one of his hands, and the left half of my body was cramping really bad. I was almost frozen in place, but this pissed me off more, and I started to push through it, and was able to slowly get closer to him. When I did this, he stopped smiling and got almost annoyed look on his face, and crawled out of the room. When I couldn't see anymore, I had a falling sensation like I usually do in these sleep paralysis episodes, and I woke up on my back with half of my body cramping. When I say half, I mean half of my face was cramping, to the point my lips on only the half of my body were cramping, showing that half of my teeth. Now, I don't think it was a seizure because I don't have a history of seizures, and haven't had anything like that happen since. I still had motor function in my arm and leg, the same amount you have during cramps. This was the weirdest sleep paralysis episode I had, and I say they are the same species because they have the same skin and look to them. What do you guys think? Anything like this happened to you? If so, please tell me. Or have you seen a sleep paralysis demon like I described?
I told you not to play with those things, my mother exclaimed in a panic. She yanked the Ouija board away from me so fast I didn't get to say goodbye.
The Scariest Experience by TheDisneyWitch. Hello everyone. I just joined this sub and decided I'd share the scariest paranormal event that I've ever had. It happened 19 years ago, but I love telling it because it's almost become like a campfire ghost story at this point. I'm 29 years old and this happened when I was about 10. It does need some backstory because my childhood was very paranormal-centric in a way. My mom and I have always been horror movie fans. I can't even remember far enough back to a time when I didn't like horror. We live in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about a 45-minute drive from St. Augustine, the oldest city in the U.S. and probably also the most haunted. All this naturally progressed into us becoming very interested in the paranormal. So much so that my parents formed a ghost hunting team when I was about 9. I wasn't allowed on the big investigations, but I was allowed to see some really cool places. One house we used to go to often was the Black Shear in Georgia, and my family there became lifelong friends even when they moved to Kentucky. They even got an episode on Dead Files. I have so many great memories from those days that I'll probably never forget. One of the scariest memories is also one I'll never forget. My parents and I went on a trip to California because my dad had to go to work and we all went. While he was doing his meetings, my mom and I visited Disneyland and it felt like a fun vacation. One evening during that trip, the three of us went on a ghost tour at the Queen Mary. I don't remember much of the tour because it was a little boring. Mostly a tour guide doing knock once for yes, two for no kind of questions in haunted areas. The stories were fascinating, and the energy there was extremely sad and oppressive for me. One of the stops on the tour was a first-class swimming pool and its attached dressing room, which essentially just looked like a public bathroom with stalls and no doors. This area had the worst energy of the whole ship, but there was supposedly some kind of mean trickster spirit that hung around there. I think I experienced that spirit when we were there. We were in the dressing room. The tour guide decided to try something. She had one person go into each of the stalls of the dressing room, and she told everyone to turn off their flashlights and cameras and just sit there and see what might happen. As soon as the room went black, within a few seconds, something grabbed my upper arm and exhaled into my ear. I felt the warmth. It scared me to death, pun intended. So much so that I immediately yelled and came running out as the lights were turned back on, and I actually cried for my mommy. I heard around that time is when they blocked off that area and stopped doing tours there as well. Well, I don't think that something happening to me would have been the cause for it. I can't help wondering if either it was my experience that made them stop the tours into there, or that something like that had happened to others and they decided to close it up for safety reasons. I know this has stuck with me even today. I watch a lot of paranormal investigations on YouTube, and I watched one where someone was able to get into the first-class pool area, and I could feel that energy again. It felt almost like a panic attack. Terrifying encounter for me, and I vowed to never go back there again. But I think I might do it for a sense of closure. I don't know if I'll get the chance to, but it would be interesting. My mother always told me that medicine was Satan's way of entering your body, and that every ailment could be healed with prayer. Bedridden, I hear her pray over me, and I wonder if hell is worse than feeling maggots eat away at the rotting flesh of what was once a treatable infected wound. Odd Events Before and After My Stepfather's Death by Anonymoose. I have to preface that I'm an atheist. I am highly skeptical of the supernatural and paranormal. I think there are natural explanations, but that isn't to say I'm not open-minded. Even I can admit a lot of strange things have been happening around the house lately. I can bust out a list of possible explanations, but part of me just wants to leave it as it is. It's entertaining and makes life interesting, and hell, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is something after death, and science just hasn't caught up to how it works. But here is all that has happened lately. Firstly, my stepfather had fallen very sick from type 1 diabetes and liver problems. His own father had died a few years prior, and that is when my stepdad started showing symptoms and later was diagnosed. I think the heart attack and pain of his own father passing and mother having health problems along with a lot of other horrible things happening to him caused him to give up on life. I don't blame the guy. This life is hard, and he was always a great dad and role model. Much love and respect for the man. But that is the story so far. Now, for the strangeness. One day, my stepdad, during the last few days of his life, had taken some sleep medicine, trazodone, I think, and it really messed him up. He was super out of it, hazy, foggy-brained, and balance issues. which he also had normally from nerve damage to his legs, so he had fallen a lot. Heartbreaking to see. He went to lay down in one of the rooms, and he was in a very poor shape, and my mother was in distress. I did what I could to comfort her and be strong, but I broke down too. He was very sick and suffering immensely. Diabetes had absolutely shredded through his body. He was very frail and weak. We could all tell his time was approaching. But while we were in the room helping him, I saw a strange white mist just next to the bedside, out of the corner of my eye. It was really strange. Not soon after, about a week or so, he passed. But I think part of him had already passed on around that time. Maybe it was a portal or a spirit to comfort him. Again, open-minded, but highly skeptical. I also noticed that one of the doors in the same room, one to the bathroom, was having issues closing. Thought nothing of it. Then my mother complained of both of our doors having problems closing. I went to investigate one day and noticed that one of the bars to the top hinge of the bathroom door was completely gone, missing. I understand over time they may weasel their way out while opening and closing doors as possible explanation. But I mean, come on. We would have heard it, or noticed issues with the door long before it came out. And it would be on the floor if it had fallen. Nothing. Nowhere to be seen, just gone. Pretty weird. Also, our outdoor shed doors were wide open, and one of the doors was slammed against the side with the wind pushing it. We locked it so it shouldn't be a thing. But who knows, maybe we forgot and thought we did, but it's very unlikely. This one has me scratching my head. I lock my doors so no one surprises me, working on a project or having headphones on. And we also have a house cat. Now, locking one door and closing it should naturally grant you a feeling of safety and peace of mind. No one should be able to get in, right? Well, lately the house cat has become increasingly clingy because one less person in the house to spend time with him has been coming to me more often, and so he sometimes bumps the door and tries to get in. He has learned to open the door by turning the doorknob, but I had mine locked, and by some fluke of nature, he was able to get in not only once, but twice. I literally have a picture of my door wide open and the doorknob locked in place. Really freaky. I'm going to try and capture the incident again with my phone for proof, but it will be tricky. So with all the strangeness, I decided to take my microphone and set it up in my room, and in the room my stepdad passed away in. And of course, as soon as I go looking for things, nothing happens. And I just feel silly talking to myself in a dark, empty room, pretending spirits or my deceased stepfather is still hanging around. But again, I'm open-minded, but so far, nothing tangible. Just a lot of random, weird things around the house that can probably be explained naturally. But again, it's fun to entertain the thought that it may be something more. If it helps any to add to the already strangeness we've experienced, just today as I was in the kitchen preparing food, I heard someone come up the steps and down the hall. I thought it was my brother coming home from being with his girlfriend, but when I go to peek down the hall, I didn't see anyone. I thought maybe he went into another room or something. He lives downstairs. It was a little strange, but after I went into my room to eat my food, I then heard the front door open and him coming home, so I don't know what it was that I heard earlier. Pretty freaky. I have face blindness, but my husband usually goes with me to events and discreetly helps me if I can't figure out who someone is. At the party today, my best friend took me aside and asked me who the man I had brought with me was.
And now the stories have come to an end. If you're still awake, well, I hope you fall asleep shortly. And the sounds that you hear in the background are going to take center stage for no more than 30 minutes to help you fall asleep or stay asleep. But if you are awake and want to hear more stories, I do have playlists for that as well. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.